without further ado, over to Alex Clapcott. Take it away, Alex.
Thank you, John. Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for coming along. I'm going to try and whiz through the presentation today and stick to time. This is the first time I've given this presentation, so this is my first run through. So anyway, I'm sure you'll get some value out of it, and thanks very much for coming along. So I'm just going to put that down. So I'm a great fan of Steve Jobs, and there's a really great book by a guy called Peter Thiel called 0 to 1, and in it he talks about Steve Jobs, and he says the best thing that Steve Jobs did was design his business. And I love the kind of concept of that, the designing of the business, and it's something that if you've seen me talk before, you'll recognize that I talk about business design a lot, and I think it's a really underutilized and kind of least focused area of business, particularly from CEOs and entrepreneurs. Oh, so hold on, oh, there we go. So, sorry, I was just having a problem with my slides there. So one of the things I would always say about myself is I'm kind of an unreasonable man. I've been an entrepreneur for 32 years. I'm now 50, so I started sort of by accident at 18 when I sort of fell out of university after 20 minutes and decided it wasn't going to be for me. And on that journey, you know, I have spent a lot of time failing at things, and you know, I have repeatedly failed, and I always feel like it's through those failures that I've learned, you know, a huge amount. And I often feel that people don't learn very much by their successes. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who are what I call accidentally successful. They've just kind of turned up in the marketplace at the right time, and they've grown with the marketplace rather than through any particular skill or capability. So I've kind of persevered, you know, I've been a great example of that perseverance that Steve Jobs has talked about. And I've also, over the last decade, you know, got myself reasonably well educated in the business world by working with a lot of great coaches and mentors, some of the best people in the world. So over my 30-year journey, what I've come to realize is that there's an awful lot of what I call crazy nonsense that's talked about business, and that we have a lot of bad practice and a lot of bad habits that we've just all got into over the years. And there's just a lot of ideas that are just accepted as norms. And, you know, this is, you know, what I'm sharing on the screen is kind of one of those crazy nonsense things that every year we spend time at the end of the year doing our annual accounts, and we pay accountants, you know, a reasonable amount of money to tell us what we already know about our businesses, about, you know, how well we've done in the previous year. So it's an exercise in looking backwards. The thing that's much less common is what I call the exercise in looking forwards, and that I've been in and out of hundreds of businesses over the last 30 years. And the question I always ask is, oh, can I have a look at your business plan? And I'm yet really to come across a business that actually has got a business plan that is current. I had a conversation with a business owner yesterday of a really tremendous business, you know, doing about a couple of million turnover. And I said, oh, have you got a business plan you can send me? And he just laughed. He said, you're joking, aren't you? And so the thing that I've learned over the time I've spent consulting and coaching and with an agency in business is that business owners don't look forward every year and don't make plans. And so this is where the concept of creating sort of the annual strategic plan came from. So before I get into how you design your annual strategic plan, I want to talk to you about what I see as some of the biggest problems in business. And, you know, this part of the presentation is designed to shake you and to make you think about your business and to perhaps give you a little kick out of maybe some personal complacency, but also just to take a sort of overview of the market and just to work out why growing a business is so hard. So the three biggest problems that I see in business are this. Basically, every business owner or entrepreneur is doing some variation of what I call winging it, right? Everybody is winging it to a degree. And the reason for that is that there is actually nowhere to go to learn how to run and grow your company. Basically, we all learn on the road. We all learn by doing. We all learn by our successes. We all learn by our failures. But there isn't actually a school or an academy where you can go to learn how to run your company. And the other big problem that I see is the marketplace for business services is really a very, very confusing mess. And it's full of everybody shouting about what they're selling and, you know, and what they're trying to sell to people. And there isn't really any structure to it. And then you add in the fact that very few people running their companies have actually engaged in any formal business training. And so I was coaching a reasonably sort of semi-famous sports star. He played international rugby. He actually, in fact, played for the Lions many years ago. And he was also an ex-military man. He'd flown jets in the RAF. And we kind of, this idea that I'm going to share with you now came out of conversation of working with him because he was quite an unusual guy. He'd hit, you know, kind of international heights of sporting ability, and he'd also operated in the military. And we did a comparison between sport, military, and business. And what we kind of came out with this little table, which I think really perfectly underlined this idea, which was that in sport, professional sports people probably spend about 95% of their time training and practicing. And they probably spend about 5% of their time engaged in the performance of the thing that they do. So 95% training and practice, 5% performance. In the military, it's probably even more percentage time spent training and practicing. So they spend probably about 99% of their time involved in training and practicing, so that if in the unfortunate incident they are called upon to actually go to a live incident or into actual war, their capabilities are kind of unconsciously competent. And then we look at business, and business is a thing that for many of us we're going to spend many decades engaged in. So some people are in business for 5 years or 10 years, 15 years, 20, 30, 40 years. You know, this is I'm in my sort of 4th decade in business now. And the reality is that for most business owners and most entrepreneurs, we expect to have a high level of performance with little or no training. And we don't practice at all. And so it's kind of inevitable that we're going to find it tough when we're on the road. And so one of the things I would say to you is, when was the last time you read a book about business from somebody that's been there before and done it before. When was the last time you went on a training course to learn about developing and growing your business? And when was the last time that you actually really invested in yourself? The reality is, and I always joke about it, is that people spend more time planning their holidays than they do their business. And that they sort of map out what they're going to do while they're away. You know, they've got to plan what time they're leaving, how they're going to get to the airport. They know what flight they're getting on. They know the flight number. They get to the airport. They can see what gate number it's going from. They've got a taxi booked at the other end, and they know what hotel they're going to be arriving at. And they may have even decided what restaurants and places they're going to visit when they're on holiday. But the majority of business owners don't have those types of sort of forward-thinking plans. And really, the business statistics from the Office of National Statistics really does bear that out in these numbers, which really indicates that the businesses are really struggling to grow. When you look at that, you can see that there's over 5.5 million businesses that have less than nine employees, which would tell me that most of them have got turnovers of probably less than £1 million. So businesses in the UK clearly are having a problem to grow. The numbers don't lie. By year 5, over 60% of businesses from startup into year 5. By year 5, 60% of businesses will have failed. By year 10, that's somewhere between 70 to 80% of businesses will fail. And the reality is, of course, is that nobody is setting out to fail. Nobody wants to fail. And yet the biggest majority of people that start businesses are going to fail. And partly that's the responsibility of the owner, because perhaps you're not dedicating enough time to learning about business and about what you need to do. And part of it is that the business to business services marketplace is very crowded, and it's really, really confusing. And in most markets or most sectors now, there's more sellers competing for less buyers, and margins are always being squeezed, and technology keeps accelerating, and it's very hard to keep up. And so buyers are confused. You know, what services do I need to buy in order to help me grow my business? The sellers are also confused because quite often they're selling things inappropriately to buyers that aren't actually going to deliver the value or the result to the customer that's buying them. And there's a concept that Tony Robbins uses, and he calls it sincerely wrong. And I've kind of coined that phrase to describe what I see in the business to business marketplace, that there's a lot of people selling services and products that are sincerely wrong. They don't actually understand that what they're selling and how they're selling it to the client isn't going to deliver that client the result. And so you've just got this incredible combination of things which make it very unlikely that you're going to find your way out of the maze and across the minefield. Now, what I'd like to do is to compare that confusion and that mess to another industry that I know a fair bit about. And I want to talk very quickly about the construction industry. So my father's been a quantity surveyor for many years. He still keeps his hand in now, even though he's 80, just because he can. And I want to talk to you about how buildings get built everywhere around the world. And so there is a process that gets followed every time. You have on the left of the screen, you have a developer who in business terms could be called an entrepreneur, who, if he wants to make a building, by the way, that's the shard, not a witch's hat, that vector. So basically the developer engages with an architect, and that's the first person in the professional team they engage. And the architect designs the vision of the developer. And once the project's going ahead, the architect then instructs a structural engineer in order to make sure that the mathematical calculations for the steels and the structure of the business is going to stand up. And then a mechanical and electrical
contact details in the chat.
Mechanical and electrical engineer is...
Follow-up email.
Can we mute that? Thank you. The mechanical and electrical engineer is the next person in the professional team who gets engaged. Their job is to make sure all the services and facilities run around the building to service the whole building. And then a quantity surveyor gets engaged, and their job is to create a specification document of all the materials and all the costs involved in the job, that they can then give a specification to the main contractor who can price the work. So that is basically your professional team. And all of that happens before anybody starts digging. And then you have what I call the trades team, who come on and off site in what I call the choreography of trades, that you have a first fix, a second fix, a third fix, and a final fix. And everybody involved in the construction industry understands perfectly who they are, what they do, and when they do it in the process of building, developing a building. And that process is pretty much followed absolutely globally. And buildings go up, often, usually on time, hopefully on budget, in the same way everywhere in the world. And my belief is that businesses can be grown in the same way, because what's missing in the growing your business industry is the structure and the process. And so what I'd like to ask you is, where are you currently on your business journey? Just stop for a moment and have a little think about where you are now and where you're trying to get to. Okay, you are making an investment of time. You may have been in your business for 5 years, 10 years. You've made a huge investment in effort, and you're making an investment of money. And so the question I'd asked you is how is it going? How's it going? What is currently your return on that investment and your return on that effort? We all know the famous quote of Benjamin Franklin: failing to plan is planning to fail. And yet, I've never walked into a business in over 30 years and a business owner or an entrepreneur has handed me a plan and said to me, this is what we're doing this year. This is what we achieved last year, and this is where we're going this year. It's never happened. So what's the solution? So the solution is really, actually, in my view, quite simple. So this is a Harvard business model. I think it first appeared in the Harvard Business Review, either in the 80s or the 90s. And it's something that I use a lot with my clients. And it's very simple. Do you know where you're going? Do you have the right plan? Can you implement the plan? If you can't say yes to all of those three questions, then you need to keep going around that loop until you can say yes to all of them. So in my consulting business, I designed some intellectual property, which is really as simple as I could dream it, really. And how I work with businesses is what I call the A to B journey. So A is where are you today, and B is where do you want to go? And whenever I go into a business, I always start by doing an audit of exactly where the business is, so that we are clear on where we are. And then we ask, where do you want to go? And what's in between is what I call the gap between where you are and where you want to get to. And of course, we all know that businesses don't grow in straight lines. They don't just go up in a perfect straight line. Businesses grow in waves, and they grow in cycles. And I'm sure you may well have come across the S curve, which is the cycle of how businesses grow. And basically, if you want to keep growing your business, you need to do two things. You need to keep innovating, and you need to keep investing in that innovation. And basically, growth in any business or any company is based on those repeating cycles of innovation and investment. And the reality is that every business or every company goes on pretty much the same journey. I've been in businesses, hundreds of businesses, and from time to time you hear a business owner say, oh yeah, it doesn't work like that in my industry, or it doesn't work like that in my business. And the reality is it's what I call business is business is business. Business is the same, whatever the company is. The product may be different in different companies, and the people may be different, but ultimately the construct of business, or the wrapper of business that goes around your product, is the same. And that businesses have the same predictable challenges all the way up the growth curve. So, you know, for one-man band startup businesses, the first challenge you have is, how do you take on your first member of staff profitably and carry on growing? You know, for micro businesses, you know, some of the problems are usually about, you know, how do you take on your first manager and start to move yourself sort of slightly out of the day-to-day running of the business? For small enterprise, you know, the challenges are about creating new channels to market, developing new products, and starting to implement process in the business. And for medium enterprise, the challenges predictably are about developing your brand, developing your culture, creating new structure in the business, and getting a kind of more comprehensive strategy. The overarching kind of truism that sits across all of those different cycles is that, you know, the challenges for business owners in terms of acquisition and retention, so acquiring new clients and retaining existing clients, always remains. And for me, that's really a very simple thing, which is really, we're talking about a sales and marketing and customer services challenge, which kind of brings me on to now to the final part of the presentation today, which is the annual strategic plan. So you remember right at the beginning of the presentation, I talked to you about the annual accounts that you do every year, looking back on something that's already happened, going into the detail on a result that you already kind of understand at a macro level. So the annual strategic plan is something you need to do every year. It's something you probably should do in December. You should probably carve out a day or maybe 2 days of your time in December every year and just start to think about, what are we going to do in the year ahead? What do I want to achieve? The word strategic is an often misused, widely interpreted term in the business world. So what I would like to say is strategic. What is strategic? And I would say it's the set of choices you make to gain advantage in your market that deliver you a better financial return. Strategy is singular. You only have one strategy in your company, and it's called your business strategy. And you should be able to write it down on, depending on the size of your business, between 1 and 3 pages. So let me just give you a few very important strategy questions. And they are, what are you trying to achieve? Where will you best achieve it? How will you achieve it? What do you need to have in place to achieve it? And what support systems are required to achieve it? These are your strategy questions, and these are what guides the plan. And really, strategy is about focusing on what is necessary and what is not necessary. And then coming on to the plan. The plan is the structure or the framework of activities that are going to deliver the strategy. So what are the actions? What is the timing? What resources, people are you using to deliver those actions? And what is the budget? So the plan helps you to stay organized and stay on track, and it provides a structure for you to manage and measure against. So I'm just going to do a sort of a little exercise with you and just asking you some questions. So if you've got a pen and paper, I hope you would have. So most business owners that I've worked with over the years, I know, are pretty much entirely focused on revenue growth, and that's either developing, gaining more clients or more customers, or getting your existing clients to spend more, or maybe it's about buying or merging another competitor business. But ultimately, that's how you get growth in a marketplace: more clients, getting your existing clients to spend more, or buying and merging with another business. So if we quickly did a little exercise. So what was your turnover last year? Write it down. What was the turnover of your business last year? And how many customers did you work with to achieve that level of turnover? And so therefore you can then calculate what your average spend per customer was. Now look at, what increase in turnover do you want to achieve this year? What's the increase you want to achieve? So how many new customers do you need? And what value of extra product or service would you need to sell to your existing clients in order to achieve that level of growth? So if you're looking at adding new clients to your business, have you identified who your ideal client is? So who is your ideal client? What is the size of their business? Maybe are you looking at that in terms of turnover or staff numbers? Do you specialize by an industry sector? Do you have a solution for companies that have specific challenges? And who do you need to be talking to in that business? Do you need to talk to the MD? Do you need to be speaking to the financial director? Do you need to speak to HR? Do you need to be speaking to marketing? And think in terms of what is the biggest problem you are solving for them? Why should they buy from you? And what is the biggest opportunity for these prospective new clients to work with you? So that's some of the questions I would ask you about how you go about gaining new clients to get that growth this year. But ultimately, we know it costs a lot more money to acquire new clients than it does to kind of look after your existing clients. So focusing on customer retention, what can you do to add more value to your existing clients? How can you reward them for being a loyal customer? And what can you do to ask your existing clients to perhaps refer new introductions or advocate on your behalf? And the question I ask is, are you really looking after your existing clients? And are you really loving them? And do they feel appreciated? So the other way you can get growth, revenue growth, is you could start developing new products or services. So when was the last time you developed a new product or service? Just very simply, if you go to a restaurant, they always have a specials board, don't they? Something you can have today that's not on the menu. And they do that, all the time. So what specials board could you create in your business? So what upgrades to your existing products or services or bolt-on could you add? Or what new products or services could you develop this year? And then if we go back to the kind of general focus, which of course is about new clients and new customers, is the whole concept of marketing and sales. So marketing and sales are the activities that will help you drive revenue growth. So the best analogy I've ever heard is a golfing analogy, that marketing is what drives the golf ball onto the green, and sales is the putting of the golf ball into the hole. And so you've got to have both of them working well. And so in order to be successful growing and acquiring new clients, you've got to have a pretty solid sales and marketing plan for the year. And what I would ask you as business owners, have you got the basics right? Have you got the basic tools that you need in your toolkit to be able to go out and do fundamental sales and marketing activity? So let's just quickly talk about the sales piece, which is the putting of the golf ball into the hole. Have you got a professionally designed product or service presentation? Because if you haven't, why are you expecting people to buy from you? Every business, every serious business and every serious business owner needs to have a professionally designed product and service presentation. It's not death by PowerPoint. It could be 4 or 5 slides that you can just flick through as you're talking to a prospect, but it needs to look good and it needs to professionally represent your business. The second question I'd ask is, do you actually know, or do your sales teams, if you've got sales teams, do you know how to properly manage a sales conversation? And the clue in professionally managing a sales conversation is the 2 ears, 1 mouth, because ultimately when you're engaging with a new prospect, it's about finding out from them what they need and working out whether your product or service is actually going to give them the solution that they want. Because if you're selling things to people, if you're selling what you do to people and it's not going to work for them, then that is kind of slightly unethical in my book. And ultimately, you're not going to build a business if you're selling people solutions that aren't going to work for them. So it is okay not to sell to people if you know your product or service isn't going to deliver them the result that they are expecting. And the last piece on the sales is, have you got your client proposal templates and your engagement documents ready to go, so that as soon as somebody says, yes, I'm interested in engaging with you, are you able to quickly and easily get them moving and get them sort of integrated into your business? So that's the sales piece. The marketing piece, the drive onto the green. So have you, as a business owner or entrepreneur, got your version of a 20-minute TED Talk about what it is you do and what you're passionate about? Can you present yourself? Could you do a presentation like I'm doing to you today? Because every business owner and every entrepreneur needs to be able to do a presentation like this, in my view. Have you got a short and punchy elevator pitch? so that when you're out networking, people can quickly and easily understand what you do. I was involved with a session last week where we were focusing on elevator pitches, and there were 20 or 30 business owners in the room, and we went round the room and then we asked everybody to deliver an elevator pitch. And it was incredible how many pitches I listened to that at the end of the pitch, I still didn't understand what they were actually selling. And so I would ask you to reflect on that. Because if your pitch is confusing, ambiguous, or not clear, you are creating a barrier to people buying from you. Have you got a 2-page product or service overview document, what I call a explainer, like a PDF? Just something, if you met somebody out networking and they said, oh yeah, we're quite interested in what you do, can you send me something? Which is quite often what people say. You have got a 2-pager that you can send them straight away. That again, it looks professional, it's designed, it says, it explains simply and perfectly what your business does. Do you have a company brochure? Now, I know for a lot of people, company brochures are kind of irrelevant these days. So, you know, that's not a necessity as such, but, you know, it's for some businesses, they're probably still relevant and still work depending on how you sell. And is your website clean, professional, and up to date? And yeah, fundamentally, the question I'm always asking is it easy for people to understand what you do? So hopefully some of the things I've talked about today have given you some food for thought, given you some ideas and some questions to take away, to think about how you develop your annual strategic plan. If you haven't got a plan for your business, it's very unlikely you're going to end up where you want to end up. I love this Google cartoon. It features quite often in my presentations, which is revenue growth solves all known problems. So if you are driving revenue growth in your business, then everything else that you need to do and all the other things that you need to fix in your business will become easier, because with money, you can do things. You can employ people, you can use outsourced services, and you can basically you can solve the issues that you have in your business. So I want to leave you with that thought today. So if you've seen my presentations before, you know I always include a Peter Drucker slide. Peter Drucker is the godfather of modern management and wrote 37 books on business, consulted with all the biggest kind of titans of American industry over the last century. And Peter basically says the only 2 ways you can grow your business is innovation and marketing. And I've not seen anything, read anything, or heard anything from anybody else in my 32 years in business that would suggest he is not anything but absolutely correct. So I'm going to finish there. I want to thank John from BBX today for hosting the event. So if you don't know who BBX are, I'll just share with you. They're a global network. It's a community of entrepreneurs who run a number of different business opportunities, including all the ones you can see on the screen. And they also run a trading exchange which helps business owners and entrepreneurs leverage their unsold time and spare capacity. and it's a tremendous business, a tremendous network with some really great businesses and people involved in it. So I'm Alex Clapcott. My business is called Sequence. I've been developing some proprietary IP, specifically in the SME business space for the last 5 or 6 years. And my contact details are there from LinkedIn. Very happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. And if there's any questions that anybody would like to ask me, I'm really happy to stay on for some time at the end now and have a conversation with everybody. So that's me.
Thanks, Alex.